The night she came back from the retreat, I knew something was wrong. It wasn't anything she said, not at first. It was the way she moved, light on her feet, almost floating around the house like she didn't live there anymore, like she was just passing through. She smiled at me, but not the way a woman smiles at a man she loves. It was the kind of smile you give a stranger on an elevator. Polite, empty, disconnected. I asked her how it went. She said it was life-changing. Said she had new priorities. Said she felt reborn. I didn't press. Not that night. But when she hugged me, she pulled away first. When she kissed me, her lips barely touched mine, like kissing the rim of a coffee cup she didn't want to drink from. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even hate. It was indifference. And believe me, if you've never felt a woman go cold in your arms, if you've never stood there holding someone who's already somewhere else, you don't know what true betrayal feels like. I didn't lose her in a fight. I didn't lose her to some blowout screaming match. I lost her somewhere out there, under the desert stars, at the hands of some snake oil prophet whispering sweet, poison nothings about freedom and awakening. I just didn't know it yet. But I would. Soon. Because when a woman finds herself, sometimes what she really means is she's finally worked up the nerve to leave you, and she's already picked your replacement. And mine? Well, he was just getting warmed up. It wasn't little things you could overlook. It was glaring. Like someone had switched out the woman I married for a stranger who only looked like her. She came back wearing clothes that didn't belong in our life. Loose, flowing robes in drab colors, like she had just wandered down from a mountain in Tibet. Bracelets stacked up her arms, clinking every time she moved. Beaded necklaces, strange stones hanging down onto her chest, catching the light like charms from some cheap street vendor. The music was gone too. No more country songs, no more old-school rock blaring through the kitchen speakers while she made Sunday pancakes. Now it was long, droning chants. Low, repetitive hums that sounded like funeral marches stretched out for hours. Sometimes I'd come home from work and find her sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, eyes closed, a half-dozen candles flickering around her. Not meditating, not praying, just humming. I tried to laugh it off at first. Call it a phase. New Age nonsense. But then the other stuff started piling up. New passwords on everything. Phone, laptop, even her tablet, which she barely used before the retreat. When I asked her why she changed them, she smiled that cold, condescending smile and said, "Privacy is healthy for the soul." Privacy. The woman who used to leave her phone face up on the counter while she sang along to Alan Jackson now guarded it like a secret weapon. And then there were the charges. I wasn't a controlling man, never tracked every penny, but I kept an eye on our joint account like any working guy should. First it was little things, $25 here, $40 there, labeled as donations to things like the Inner Light Collective and Earth's Sacred Balance. Then it got heavier. $600 wired to something called Spiritual Reawakening Journeys. $1,100 transferred under a note that just said, Energy Alignment Retreat Deposit. I confronted her once, kept my voice steady, just asked. She didn't even deny it. She laughed. Actually laughed at me. Money is just a construct, she said, adjusting her leather-strapped stone necklace. If you weren't so tied to the material plane, you'd understand. Material plane. That's when I knew this wasn't just about healing crystals and chanting at the moon. Some man, had gotten inside her head. And he wasn't just feeding her spiritual garbage. He was positioning himself as the next step in her awakening. The emotional distance was a canyon by then. She didn't just forget anniversaries or skip small talk. She started treating me like I was some lower being, an obstacle she had to gently step around on her way to enlightenment. And the way she talked about finding herself, about how some people weren't meant to stay in your vibration forever. It wasn't accidental. It wasn't innocent. It was the beginning of her exit. Not just from the marriage. From the life we built. From the promises she made with tears in her eyes a decade ago. And the worst part? She thought she was smarter than me. Thought she could hide it with burning sage and humming at the dinner table. But the truth was starting to stink up the house worse than any incense could cover. And I was already reaching for the matches. I stopped playing dumb. She wanted privacy? Fine. But privacy cuts both ways. While she floated around the house burning sage and humming to herself, I was digging. Quiet. Patient. Relentless. It started with her phone. She slipped up one night, left it unlocked while she was in the shower. I didn't have long, maybe a minute, tops, but it was enough. Messages from an app I'd never seen before. Not texting. Not email. Some encrypted garbage called WhisperLink, built for people who wanted to make sure nothing stuck around long enough to leave evidence. But what I saw in that minute was enough to blow the lid off the whole damn thing. Messages from someone named Soul. Always Soul. No last name. No pictures attached to the profile. But the words? Those were pure poison. Your husband's energy is binding you. You can't evolve while you're chained to his limitations. The universe is calling you to a higher purpose. Don't let old bonds hold you back. And worse, late-night messages, dripping with things that had nothing to do with spiritual enlightenment. I can't wait to feel your energy in my arms again. Again. Not someday. Not in the future. Again. They'd already crossed the line. Probably during that so-called retreat, while I was back home, fixing a broken fence, missing her, trusting her. I dug deeper, pulled up her old social media accounts, the ones she hadn't touched in years, and found something buried under layers of rebranding. Photos from the retreat. Blurry at first, but clear enough once you knew what to look for. A bonfire under the desert stars. Men and women sitting cross-legged, hands raised to the sky, pretending to pull energy from the stars. And in the center of it all, a figure. Bare-chested, robed in white linen pants, beads dangling from his neck. Smiling like a snake who knew exactly how many rats were in his trap. Soul. Real name? Probably not. But real enough to wreck my house. I found more when I dug. More than I wanted to. Turns out Soul wasn't just a spiritual guide. He was the founder of the Earth's Sacred Balance Collective, a healing community registered as a non-profit out of Nevada. Non-profit my ass. The records, the ones you can find if you know how to pull public filings, told the real story. Thousands of dollars funneled into donations, all untraceable once they cleared. Retreats every 3 months. And a trail of broken marriages and drained bank accounts left in his wake. He was good at it too. Smart enough not to make direct moves on the women right away. Build trust first. Sell them on their potential. Cut them off from their old lives. Then swoop in when they were lonely, scared, desperate to be told they were special. It wasn't about spirituality. It was about power. And money. And sex. And my wife, the woman who once laughed so hard at dumb beer commercials she cried, was just another trophy on his dusty, blood-stained shelf. I closed the tabs, turned off the computer, and sat there in the dark, staring at nothing, the rage boiling so hot behind my ribs it hurt to breathe. I wasn't mad because she cheated. I was mad because she made herself stupid for a man who didn't even have to lie well. But fine. If she wanted a new life, I was about to give her one. Just not the way she thought. It didn't take long for her to show her real hand. Maybe 2 weeks after she got back from that so-called retreat, she sat me down at the kitchen table, all calm and rehearsed, like she was about to pitch a business deal instead of detonating a marriage. She smiled that same empty smile, like she was proud of herself, and said, "I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I think it's best if we separate. It's time for both of us to find our true paths. No anger, no apology, no sadness. Just sterile words, served up cold like leftovers nobody wanted." I didn't say anything at first. Just watched her, watched the way she couldn't quite hold my eye, the way her fingers fidgeted with that damn leather necklace Soul had given her. She had it all mapped out. In her mind, she wasn't just leaving, she was upgrading. She talked about a peaceful separation, keeping things amicable, preserving energy. Translation, she expected me to roll over. And while she spoke in that fake, serene voice, I watched something else happening behind her words, something she didn't even realize she was showing. A rush to move fast. A fear that if she slowed down, if she had to look me in the eye for too long, the cracks in her story would start to show. She slid a manila folder across the table. Inside, rough drafts of asset division, her proposal. She had it all written out, even color-coded. She wanted half of the house, half of the retirement, half of the savings I spent 20 years building. She wanted the cars, the dogs, the damn furniture. She didn't even blink while asking for it. And the best part? She had already rented a place. Found a loft downtown, near the artistic district she used to laugh about when we drove past it. Signed the lease before she even told me she wanted out. In her mind, I was just another old coat she was hanging back in the closet before stepping into her new spiritual designer lifestyle. And she thought I'd be broken. She thought I'd rage, beg, crumble. She thought she had all the power. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't even begin to imagine, was that I had already started my war. I had already switched the bank accounts. Already met with a lawyer who specialized in scorched earth divorce cases. Already hired the private investigator who was stacking evidence higher than her sage sticks. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't fight. I smiled. Signed nothing. Said we'd talk again soon. And while she packed her boxes, lighting incense and humming fake mantras under her breath, I was already building the fire that was going to burn her paper empire to ash. Because real men don't fight fair when the people they love turn on them. They fight smart. They fight quiet. And when they move, they make damn sure it's permanent. The days after she announced the separation played out like a bad dress rehearsal for a play nobody wanted to see. She floated around the house in her incense cloud, talking to herself, humming under her breath, pretending she was some enlightened sage about to ascend into a higher life. Meanwhile, I was tightening every bolt in the machine she didn't even know existed. The first move was the banks. We had 2 joint accounts, one for bills, one for savings. By the time she handed me that manila folder, I had already moved the bulk of the savings into a solo account under my name. Legally clean, perfectly timed, and fully within my rights under our marriage agreement. She could have the houseplants and the damn decorative pillows. She wasn't touching the real money. Next came the titles. The cars, 2 of them, were in my name only. She didn't realize that when she demanded her half. One trip to the DMV, a few notarized documents later, and the ownership was locked down tighter than a vault. I even called in a favor at work, getting my HR buddy to update my 401k beneficiary information before she could think about trying to stake a claim. The third strike was the house. When we first bought it, I had insisted on something she barely remembered, a small clause tucked into the mortgage paperwork, stating that in the event of a marital dispute, the party who stayed and maintained the mortgage could claim sole residency. At the time, she called me paranoid. No? It was my castle, and she didn't even know she had locked herself out. While she wandered the living room playing with crystals and burning sage, I sat at the kitchen table, methodically scanning every email, every account, every loose end she might try to grab when she realized the walls were closing in. And she had no clue. Not a single one. She thought I was sulking. Thought I was crushed, numb, drifting like a wounded animal waiting for her to finish the kill. She had no idea the man she thought she was leaving behind had already moved 6 steps ahead of her. No shouting. No pleading. Just action. And while I worked, the private investigator kept feeding me gold. Photos of her and soul. Not at a temple. Not at a collective. At a cheap hotel off the interstate, 2 towns over. Arm in arm. Lips locked in the parking lot like teenagers at prom. Date stamped, time stamped, undeniable. Evidence strong enough to slice through any no-fault divorce protections she thought she could hide behind. Every day she meditated on the living room floor, chanting about freedom and vibrations and shedding old identities. She was one step closer to losing every damn thing she thought she could steal from me. And still, I stayed quiet. I let her pack her things. I let her talk about how we should split the TV, the tools, the furniture. I nodded, smiled, pretended to be sad. Because real revenge isn't loud. Real revenge is the man who holds the door open for you and smiles while you walk straight into the storm you built with your own hands. And she? She had no idea the sky was already black over her head. I didn't strike all at once. Men like me, we don't just hit back. We wait until they've already bet everything, until they're smiling over the pot they think they've won. And then we flip the table and watch them scramble to pick up the pieces. The first hit landed 2 weeks after she moved into her new Freedom Loft. She tried to pull money from our old joint account, probably to pay for one of those overpriced energy retreats or to help fund Soul's next scam. But when she opened the banking app, all she found was an empty screen. $0. 0 cents. She called me, voice tight and high-pitched, trying to sound casual. Hey, there's an issue with the account? I didn't even give her the satisfaction of a full answer. Just said, handle it through your lawyer, and hung up. The second blow was waiting for her at the divorce mediation. She strutted into that downtown office building like she had already won, floating in her baggy robes and handmade sandals, holding a leather folder stuffed with demands. Half the house. Half my retirement. Spousal support for emotional damages. I sat across the table in a plain black jacket, silent, letting her spill her delusions onto the carpet. Then my attorney slid a file across the table. Not a thick one, maybe 10 pages, but every sheet was a bullet to her fantasy life. Color photographs. Time-stamped hotel bills. Credit card charges tied to Soul's collective. Social media posts they thought were deleted but weren't, recovered by the investigator. Affidavits from witnesses at the retreats. People more than happy to sell out Soul's true teachings when offered legal protection. And stapled right on top? A printout from WhisperLink itself, pulled through a subpoena my attorney filed quietly weeks earlier, showing explicit messages between her and Soul while she was still living in my house, spending my money, sleeping in my bed. Her face drained of color halfway through the first page. By the third, her hands were trembling. By the last, she couldn't even look at me. The mediator leaned back in his chair, cleared his throat, and said the words I had been waiting to hear. Given the evidence of adultery and financial misconduct, your client may want to reconsider her demands. Her lawyer, a slick, spray-tan vulture who probably promised her the world when she first walked through his door, paled visibly and whispered something furious into her ear. But it didn't matter. The bomb had already gone off. She wasn't getting half of anything. Not the house. Not the retirement. Not a single cent more than the bare minimum the law allowed for someone caught neck-deep in infidelity and fraud. In fact, if she pushed too hard, we could countersue for damages. She crumbled right there in the chair, head down, fake necklace swinging between her knees. The woman who once stood in my kitchen preaching about higher vibrations was now vibrating for real, from fear, from rage, from the raw realization that the man she thought was sleepwalking through life had been building a guillotine behind her back. And the blade had just dropped. I didn't say a word. Not a smirk. Not a whisper. Not a goddamn look. Because when you win properly, you don't celebrate. You just walk out the door while they sit there in the ruins they built themselves. And I had no intention of looking back. I knew she wouldn't give up that easy. People like her, they don't know how to lose quietly. They scramble, they scratch, they grasp at whatever scraps they think they can still grab when the walls come crashing down. 3 days after mediation, I got a letter from her lawyer. A new demand. She was claiming emotional distress from the exposure of her private communications. Said I had violated her spiritual rights by using private conversations against her. I read the letter once, shook my head, and poured myself a coffee. Then I handed it straight to my attorney, a bulldog of a woman who smiled like a wolf when she saw it. Her response? A countersuit. Not a threat, a full formal countersuit. Emotional distress? Fine. We would show the court emotional distress, mine. The betrayal. The misuse of marital funds. The fraud. The secret financial support to another man while still married. We included everything. Every photo. Every whispered message. Every transfer of cash into Soul's greasy hands. And because Nevada's courts didn't look kindly on adultery tied to financial misconduct, especially with evidence in hand, the law was brutally on my side. The second blow landed like a hammer. The court ordered a freeze on her assets. Everything she owned, her car, her half-empty loft apartment, even the spiritual jewelry business she had started on Etsy, was now under review pending the outcome of the case. She wasn't allowed to sell. She wasn't allowed to move funds. She wasn't allowed to take a damn dime without permission. The third move was even quieter. I had gotten in touch with her landlord through my lawyer, nothing illegal, just simple business. Turns out she had lied on her rental application, claiming she had a stable income that no longer existed. The minute her assets froze, she missed a rent payment. The landlord filed eviction papers within a week. I didn't do it to be cruel. I did it because real justice isn't about making noise. It's about cutting off every escape route and letting the choices they made crush them on their own. When she called me late one night, sobbing, begging me to talk, I didn't even answer. I let the call go to voicemail. Listened to her broken, blubbering voice as she tried to spin the same lies she used to tell herself. We can fix this. I didn't mean for it to happen. We're still connected. I know you feel it too. No. The only thing I felt was free. I poured another coffee, sat on my back porch, and watched the sun come up while her voice played quietly in the background, growing smaller and smaller until it finally cut off into silence. That morning, I signed the final set of papers my lawyer sent over. Clean. Precise. Permanent. The divorce decree finalized the settlement. House, mine. Retirement, untouched. Vehicles, mine. Debt incurred under her name while funding Soul's scams. Hers to pay. No spousal support. No second chances. She got her freedom, after all, but not the kind she was dreaming of while she burned incense and whispered mantras into the desert wind. Real freedom is brutal. It doesn't hand out second chances. It burns bridges so hot there's nothing left but ash. And while she packed what little she had into the back seat of a borrowed sedan, scrambling to find a new place to crash, I slept soundly for the first time in years. because the trap she set for me had snapped shut on her own ankle. And now? Now it was time to bury the past and build something better. I always knew Soul wasn't some enlightened master. You could smell the scam on him before you even saw his face. But once the walls started closing in around my ex, I figured, why not tighten the noose around him too? I wasn't about to leave loose ends. So while she was busy getting served, evicted, and drained of whatever dreams she had left, I turned my attention to the man who helped light the match. It wasn't hard. Con men love attention. They leave trails even when they think they're being smart. The private investigator dug deeper, past the fake nonprofits, past the fake names, into real history. Soul's real name was Darren Foley, a two-time felon. Fraud and embezzlement. 2 different states. 2 different sets of broken lives left behind. He bounced from one scam to another: spiritual healing, cryptocurrency investments, sustainable farming collectives, always popping up somewhere new right after the last scheme crumbled. Always leaving someone else holding the bag. And guess what? There were warrants out for him, pending civil suits and criminal investigations he had been dodging for years by shifting names, states, and hiding behind religious freedom loopholes. I packaged up everything the PI found, handed it off to a few of his old victims through a lawyer friend. No threats, no direct contact, just information. The kind that doesn't go away once it hits a court record. Within 2 months, Soul's whole house of cards collapsed. His Earth Sacred Balance Collective got audited. Bank accounts frozen. Retreats canceled. Civil lawsuits filed by 3 women he had scammed out of tens of thousands of dollars. And the best part? The moment the money dried up, Soul did exactly what parasites do. He slithered away. Dropped my ex faster than a snake shedding dead skin. No goodbye letter. No tearful parting. One day he was there, selling dreams. The next, he was gone, leaving her standing alone in a downtown loft with unpaid bills, maxed out credit cards, and a growing list of people she owed and couldn't dodge anymore. She tried reaching out to the community for help. But spiritual groups are like rats on a sinking ship when the money stops flowing. The same people who had sung her praises, who had posted heart emojis under her Instagram mantras, ghosted her into silence. No GoFundMe. No retreat scholarships. No karmic miracles. Just eviction notices, angry landlords, and a slow, grinding realization that the life she thought was waiting for her beyond the wreckage of our marriage never really existed. It had always been a scam. The man she destroyed her life for had never seen her as anything but a temporary meal ticket. And now she was broke, alone, and invisible. The final casualty in a war she started and thought she had already won. Meanwhile, me? I was just getting started. Freedom. That's what she had preached about so much in the weeks before she left. Freedom from oppression. Freedom to grow. Freedom to find her highest self. Turns out, freedom feels a lot different when you're broke, abandoned, and sleeping on someone's borrowed couch. After Soul disappeared, she had no safety net. No friends left in the community. No backup plan. The job market didn't care about her certifications in sacred healing modalities. The landlord didn't take positive vibrations as rent payments. Reality hit her like a freight train. I heard bits and pieces through the grapevine. I wasn't looking for updates, but when a wreck is loud enough, you hear it whether you want to or not. First came the crash landing. She tried working retail. Lasted a month. Couldn't handle the hours, the customers, the reality that nobody cared about her awakening. They cared if the register balanced at the end of the night. Then she bounced from job to job. Health food stores, yoga studios, even a few shady spiritual advisors needed Craigslist ads that smelled like the same scams Soul used to run. Nothing stuck. The woman who once had a warm home, 2 good cars, a golden retriever snoring by the fireplace, was now living out of a 1-room sublet above a vape shop. No car. No health insurance. No friends who answered her calls anymore. Even the social media facade collapsed. The endless posts about healing journeys and embracing cosmic paths went silent. No more polished photos of sunsets and barefoot walks through meadows. No more hashtags about awakening and gratitude. Silence. And in the rare moments she popped up, tagging old acquaintances in desperate pleas for jobs, or just needing a place to crash temporarily, she looked hollow, gaunt, aging faster than time should have allowed. The sparkle gone from her eyes, replaced by the dull glaze of someone realizing too late that she set fire to her own lifeboat. Meanwhile, my life moved in the opposite direction. Promotion at work. New friends, the kind you meet when you build things, not when you fake enlightenment. Steady weekends clearing land for a future house. Even a real relationship brewing, slow, steady, with a woman who knew who she was without needing to chant it to strangers for validation. One afternoon, maybe a year after the divorce papers dried in the courthouse file cabinets, I drove past the downtown strip. Didn't mean to. Just running errands, same as any Saturday. And there she was, standing outside a dingy convenience store. Threadbare hoodie pulled tight against the wind. Paper bag of dollar store groceries clutched to her chest. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did, but couldn't summon the energy to even look up. For a second, just a second, I thought about pulling over, asking how far she'd fallen. If she remembered how it used to be. If she regretted trading a real life for a snake oil dream. But I didn't. Because true power isn't rubbing your victories in someone's face. It's knowing you don't need anything from them anymore, not apologies, not recognition, not closure. I let the red light change, pressed down on the gas, and drove on without looking back. Some ruins are meant to be left behind. And she? She was just another collapsed temple in a desert built on lies. The funny thing about surviving betrayal is that at some point, survival isn't enough. You don't just want to breathe, you want to build. Not to prove anything. Not to shove it in anyone's face. But because standing still would mean they still had power over you. And I wasn't giving her, or the man who slithered into our lives, that kind of victory. 6 months after the last time I saw her standing outside that gas station, I signed the papers on my next beginning. 40 acres of rough land outside town. Untamed, stubborn soil that hadn't been touched in decades. Most people looked at it and saw a mess. I looked at it and saw a future. The first project was simple, a road. A way in. Every weekend, every spare hour I had, I was out there, clearing brush, moving rocks, cutting paths. Sometimes alone. Sometimes with a few good men I trusted, men who knew what it meant to work with their hands and their hearts at the same time. And little by little, what was wild became something stronger. A cabin went up. Nothing fancy, just strong timber, real wood stove, thick stone fireplace. A home, not a house. The woman standing beside me now didn't hum fake mantras or talk about spiritual journeys. She showed up at dawn with coffee in hand, swinging a hammer, laying shingles in the sun without a single complaint. She didn't need to find herself. She already knew who she was. And the boy I once thought I'd never have time to raise properly was growing into a man who could split a log in one clean hit, who said, "Sir," and "thank you," without being reminded. We built bonfires in the fall, hunted deer in the winter, planted oak trees in the spring. Roots deeper than any betrayal could ever rot. Sometimes at night, sitting on the porch with a beer in my hand and the firelight dancing against the dark fields, I thought about her. Not with anger. Not even with sadness. Just with a kind of cold, hard clarity. She wasn't the tragedy of my life. She was the reason I tore it down and built something better. The day she left wasn't the day I lost everything. It was the day I was handed a shovel and a choice. Bury myself, or build something no storm could ever touch again. And standing there, watching the sun set over the land I fought for, the family I protected, the future I made with my own blood and calloused hands, I knew the truth. They thought they broke me. All they really did was set me free.